But we're just gonna wait a minute to see if Cliff joins, otherwise we'll start because we do have a quorum. Aha, here we go. Put this here. And oh, and Mariah too. So let me just promote everybody. And Jeff, I don't know if you saw, but the minutes were not posted until just maybe 15 minutes ago. Unfortunately, I think they got missed.
I I confess I looked for them and did not see them.
Yeah, they didn't get posted. I think
Bummer.
with no I know with Nicole out, I think they
Oh yeah, because
yeah,
might.
so
Yeah,
Charlie just missed the minutes. He obviously has a lot going on and is, I think, playing double duty a little bit.
gotcha.
So uh
There, Melanie, I have been communicating with a young lady who I take it is now on board. And I thought we would be meeting at this meeting, but that will have to.
Oh,
is she Tiffany's replacement, or maybe?
I think she may be Devon's. I don't
Oh,
know. I'm not sure.
oh, huh.
got it.
I'm not sure of exactly what the structure is, but I actually communicated with her. She responded in connection with some other documents.
Got it. All right. Well, Jeff, I had the benefit of actually reading your document because I
Because
was
I
on the
copied
original
you. Yes.
email. Yes. But why don't we have them reposted for
Sure,
next
that's
time?
fine.
Yeah, so that people can
Yeah, yeah.
take a look at them. So we are going to skip that item on the agenda. And I am going to first identify somebody to do our minutes. So Dick, I think it's your turn again. We're back to the beginning of the alphabet for minutes.
Okay,
Okay. And then we'll just do our quick roll call. So Dick,
I'm here.
Cliff,
Here.
Jeff,
Here.
and Mariah here. And I am here as well. All right. So digging into the rest of the agenda, I'm just going back and forth between screens. So I wanted to just make sure that we were clear on the timeline as it stands right now. We just had a couple things move, so I'm just going to share my screen for a minute and review where we are from a timeline perspective. So this is our current meeting. The core things that we're reviewing right now are special education funding, as well as salaries, steps, and lanes. I believe, Dick, you also posted the healthcare memo, maybe with the summary, but we approved that last time. So I don't know if there was something specific you
Okay.
wanted to discuss there.
Sure, and I'll make a brief comment about that now, if you want.
Sure.
What I did, Sadaf, was to respond to your comment about including some discussion of timing
Got it. Great.
of negotiations, and that is included at the end.
Okay, wonderful. So for the meeting, the full committee meeting on Wednesday, the 11th, the agenda that we have is reviewing that healthcare benefits document, Dick, that you shared and posted for this meeting that we talked about last week. The future subcommittee is going to review their solar initiative, and the town subcommittee has some components of their report that they had intended to share, but I haven't seen those posted yet, so I'm not clear what will be shared for that. I also wanted to make sure that we review the full report outline. There's still parts that are missing from that, but the hope is to make sure that we are clear on who's writing which sections. I think there's still some gaps in that understanding, so we'll work through that and maybe make some progress this week. I think, Dick, you had also asked or perhaps put on the agenda for the 11th, a discussion on ability to pay. Is that going to be addressed as well?
I have not circulated anything on that, so that may have to be deferred to another meeting.
Other meeting. Okay. All right, that's fine. So once that gets finalized, we'll just slot it in. So that's just kind of a recap. And then next week, as a reminder, I'm unable to make that meeting. our meeting on the 17th. Jeff is actually going to chair that meeting. And the goal is for Jeff to review the BEEP recommendation and document with the next steps that were identified last time. Mariah, I had on this list the zero-based budgeting based on our prior conversation, and I just wanted to see if that was still if that was going to be possible or not at that time.
I'm not sure it's going to be. I don't think I have enough data. I think what I had said last week was I could show you the model, but I don't think it's going to be meaningful at this point.
Okay. I think
I'm
one of
sorry.
the, okay, then that's fine. I mean, I know that you had said that originally we had it slated for the beginning of this month and you had said a couple weeks out, so I wanted to put it in here as a placeholder. I think I mean, let me know if I think we should talk about whether that's still useful, and if so, if we want to talk about it later, and given the timeline, if that still warrants this committee taking a look at it, just given everything else we're trying to do, or rather given the timeline we have for the report. My understanding was that this was going to be kind of a gut check around ratios and I think that's still useful. So I guess the question is, I'm curious to hear from other people if that's still useful.
The reason that's it off that I'm concerned about it is because it requires collection of other data that we do not already have in the at our fingertips. I'll give an example like students in learning center at a certain school to start to do. And so it starts to drill down, which it's not identifying or anything like that, but it just is another level of data collection from staff at a time which they're already overburdened. And so I'm just concerned about asking for that at this point in time, because I think it will just, it will take them so long if they're willing to do it, that again, it's just like, we're going to get behind the 8 ball on it. So.
Yeah. So I understand that. And also there are the additional budget questions that I think that were sent to the school admin team. And I am in the process of reading through that 106-page document that was published. Admittedly, I haven't gotten through all of it. But I assume there will be some follow-up questions coming out of that as well. So maybe we can put a pin in the zero-based budgeting piece. If we don't have the data for that, we can get back to it if we need to, but I think there is an outstanding question about when we will have an opportunity to address the open questions about the multi-year budget, and then perhaps dig more deeply into the fiscal 27 budget, which is what the budget document that was published last week covers. So I don't know, Mariah, if you discussed that with the schools, with the admin team or not.
Discussed the which part of it?
Yep, both parts. So when they think it's reasonable to get back to those questions that were sent to them. Number one. Yeah. And then, I mean, well, let's answer that question first.
Well, I think that a lot of the questions that were sent were in the book. So there were a couple I think that weren't. I have them still in my inbox. Also, I just want to note that today is actually the school committee annual legislators meeting, and that's why like they can't be here because everyone else except for me is at the other meeting. Just FYI. But I think that what would make sense, I have read the budget book once, but only in its entirety, and I want to go through again and see which ones like weren't answered and then cut down your list. There's also a larger list that, for those of you who listened to the meeting last week, school committee is being asked to submit our questions to Z Perry, who is the project manager for the admin and finance office. And so we can, I think, put the few questions that are left from this group into that larger bucket to just make sure that, like, to consolidate it into one list of questions for them to work from, if that makes sense.
So I think it's fine to consolidate the list. I'm not concerned about that as a process step. The question I have is more around timeline and making sure that our committee gets an opportunity to get the answers that are outstanding.
Well, let me articulate a couple other issues that are going around. The first one is that school committee is supposed to vote on our initial budget request Thursday. And because the February 15th deadline to present a budget to advisory committee from the town bylaws is binding to us, or at least advisory. And in the meantime, though, we still don't have an allocation from the town. That we were told we would have 1.9 million additional for FY 27. That was then withdrawn last week without much explanation, and I have made multiple requests for our revised 3-year allocation and have not gotten a response in the better part of a week. So staff is working on presenting a no override scenario for Thursday, but they don't know what even the base allocation is right now. So there's like, I appreciate that this committee wants things, and PSB doesn't have fundamental data to
Yeah.
be able to work on its budget.
Right. So, yeah, that was going to be a question that I was going to raise at the meeting on Wednesday, because I know that you don't have that information. So it wasn't fair to ask you that question. So my hope was to raise this question on Wednesday at the full committee meeting for the.
And I plan on raising it if Chaz were here now, I would be asking it. And I plan on raising it on Wednesday as well.
Okay. All right, so I think I'll still flag and highlight that there's still some sort of follow-up that needs to happen on the budget. It's kind of a macro topic, right? Which includes the follow-up questions, potentially questions that we have on the budget book that was published last Thursday. And then the question of potentially incremental dollars from the town, both in fiscal 27 as well as 28 and 29, which has never, the last two which have never been discussed, at least in meetings that I've been. So, you know, a lot of open questions that remain. So I guess my request to you, Mariah, is whenever you have a better understanding of when the schools in the town will have better line of sight to that, we should schedule some time within this committee to talk about that in more detail.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the group on that? Dick, you're on mute.
This actually is a question about the budget book, Mariah. I'm curious as to the class sizes or the section sizes in Pierce for 5th through 8th grades. There are 65 to 68 kids and 4 sections. And I'm wondering if that's a physical constraint on classroom size or if something else is going on there. Because instead of a target of 25 or guideline of 25 for all of the other schools, it's a guideline of 16 or 18 or 19 or something. And I'm wondering what's happening there.
I want to say there was some sort of allusion to that, which confused me because I think, or this is for 6 through 8, you're saying, not
I think it was 5 through 8, but
5
yeah,
through 8.
The upper grades.
Yeah, 6 through 8, because it's K through 5 at Old Lincoln. It does have to do at Old Lincoln with the classroom sizes. Not at Old Lincoln, sorry.
Fisher Hill.
Thank you, Fisher Hill.
Okay.
With the classroom sizes. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, because the explanation was not classroom sizes. It was a reference to students having access to educators who are certified.
I thought it did have to do with, I thought it was cited with the classroom size.
And then I missed it.
Okay,
So,
I thought it was, but I can go back and check, but I'm pretty sure that's what it said.
Okay.
Okay. So Mariah has that as a next step to find out when we can have a conversation about that further. And then I just want to flag for the 18th. And again, I'm not available that day. What we have teed up to share with the broader committee in order to get votes for those documents will hopefully be based on today's discussion, the special education funding for non-residents, as well as the salaries, steps and lanes from our perspective. And then Futures has a couple of things teed up as well, and I'm not sure yet what the town has. Okay. Right. All right. I'm gonna stop sharing. Give me a second. I just have to let Jeff back in.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, so that is the upcoming agenda. Back to our documents. So
Can I just, sorry, just to close the loop,
yeah.
that the budget book says, each building also has several incredibly small class sizes with some classroom spaces at just 600 square feet starting in grade 4. So that's just why it is in the budget book, Dick.
Okay, yeah, as I recall, there was an asterisk at that point in the chart. I don't have the book in front of me.
Yeah, the asterisk does have that, but the class size is about the classroom spaces.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt it off. I just wanted to close that loop before it fell away.
Yep. Problem. All right. So shifting gears, Dick, I'm going to hand it over to you to review your documents.
Okay, why don't we actually start with the salary steps and lanes, which we did look at our last meeting. And this is a revision of that in light of the comments at the last meeting. The document as it now exists points out that the bachelor's step 6 and above have limited applicability. They're removed from the table on page 2 above step 5. Also, Mariah, you commented that the town, you asked about the town and their use of steps. So that is explicitly in here, and the statement that the town salary structure should also be studied. And finally, in light of what we heard along the way about master's step 6 being the hiring target for the schools, it adds master's step 6 to the school year 25 to 26 table. So this basically is designed to respond to all of the comments that came up at our last meeting.
All right, thank you.
Since this
So-
came in late and I was working all day, so I didn't get the chance to read these, I don't know if everyone else got the chance to, but is it possible to take some time to just read them?
Yeah.
Or should I run that in parallel? I can't listen and read at the same time. That's all.
Take a few minutes to read it. You're talking about the bullets specifically, because those were sort of the big changes.
Well, there was a summary at the beginning, and then it's to focus your attention, Mariah. It's
Thank you.
footnote 2.
Yep.
The table on page 2 takes out the bachelor's step 6 and above, goes up to bachelor's 5, I believe. In note 1, points out your comment that the town utilizes steps and says that its salary structure should be studied. And finally, the tables at the end for the current school year, 25 to 26, add master's step 6, the hiring target.
Thank you for
those are
helping
the
me.
changes. Those are the changes.
Yeah, so go ahead and take a few minutes to read it. I think that's okay. I'm happy to wait and make sure we have a discussion on it that you can contribute to.
I'm catching up too. So this is the salaries 2.9 salaries steps.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dick, did you include the 48% being at the top step?
Oh, yes, I did. That is on not all pages.
Is it on page 2 in that paragraph after the table? Because you say
Yeah, no,
more
hold
than
on.
1/2 receive step increases.
Right. It's on page 1, right in the first paragraph. say line 3 to 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, I should have mentioned that. I added that also.
And it's in the first bullet, I guess, right? The very first line, sort
Yes.
of. Yeah. Okay.
Approximately one half, yeah.
For the tables that are on page 4 and 5,
Yes.
I'm just sorry, I'm trying to read them. Is it possible that when you include these, you could include the actual table grid?
The grid lines.
Yeah, the grid lines, exactly.
Yes, I
Or
could
move everything into footnotes. I just find it hard to read, and I bet I'm not the only one with the text broken up like this.
um, essentially putting grid lines between the communities.
Yeah, and moving all of your notes into footnote or like, yeah, footnotes on the
Yeah,
table.
I would be inclined not to do the latter because that would just be a whole, that would be 11 or 12 footnotes kind of stacked. But what I think the suggestion of putting each community in a box, I think would work, and I can do that.
What's interesting is that these salaries that are the comps, my recollection is that for negotiations, and you could go back and validate this against the communications that were released during the last round of negotiations, also include geographic peers, which yours does not. And I know that this list of communities was provided and they are used for other purposes, but the geographic peers include Boston and Cambridge, which have a different salary structure.
Right. No, what I did was I took the school committee or the peers that the school committee identified and used those.
Yes, but for negotiations, I believe Cambridge and Boston are also included as um, geographic peers. And I think it's important to include that in your analysis because, sorry, I was turning the whole thing to look at it. I couldn't figure out how to rotate. Because for a lot of people, as you all know, like the commuting aspect is real in the transportation and people feel very differently about transportation in relation to each other. And so the idea of traveling to Chelmsford versus Brookline has a very different angle than Boston versus Brookline or Cambridge versus Brookline. So if our salaries aren't competitive against our geographic peers, then we still have other issues. It's not just about the peer districts that are cited here.
Yeah, I know. Then we get into the issue of the fact that Boston isn't hiring, Boston is closing schools, Boston is running a 50 to $150 million deficit in its schools. I mean,
I don't think any school district right now is
we,
exactly crowing over its finances.
yeah,
So
but I mean, do we go down that route also? It certainly to me was simplest to to take the districts that that were identified by the PSB and go from there. And not get
Simplest
into,
might not be most accurate, though,
not
in
get
terms of
into
what's
these arguments
actually going on.
about who's hiring or not hiring.
Well, I
Closing.
don't think any analysis of which of those districts are hiring or not hiring has been done. I'm just saying what we've done in the past when we've looked at the actual comparisons for salary.
I think to the extent, I think if those geographic peers are included in those discussions, they're worth citing in some capacity. I know it isn't as clean, Dick.
Yeah.
But if that is a benchmark that's being used in salary negotiations,
We can work them in, but
yeah. I mean, I get your point. I get your point, and also I think it is. I understand why they are used as salary, as comparables in some capacity as well. Okay, so do other people have comments? I had some comments as well. No, okay.
I just have a question why 24, 25 and 25, 26 are both included.
the only reason was I didn't have data for all of, I can use just 25, 26. I didn't have data for all of the communities. And we could simplify it. I'll take off the 24, 25, but I could not find Belmont. I don't know if they're still negotiating, that hasn't been posted. So I'll take off 24, 25 and we'll skip Belmont.
Just one quick clarifying question on the first table, Dick, on page 2. At the bottom, it says inflation beginning of FY25 to 26, and then it's got Boston, Cambridge, Newton dash MA and then dash NH. Is that meant to be New Hampshire, or am I just
That is, yeah, that's our
block or something?
That's our, yeah.
Okay,
That's our area.
interesting. Okay, thanks.
All right, so I think the primary thing the primary thing that I've been trying to think about is how do we encapsulate some of the comments that are now in your summary and actually that were to some extent in the covered across the prior document. I think the implication, and it's not clear to me, Dick, if this is more of a statement for the select board to consider or recommendation related to cost of living increase. But in the second bullet, I think what perhaps what you're saying is that you would recommend that this be that the salary increases are reduced, or is it more a data point to demonstrate the financial impact of a higher increase? It wasn't clear to me.
We could be more explicit.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I've been thinking about is that given the size of the large percentage of the school budget that salaries occupy, I wonder if one statement that we want to make or one way to consider how to frame this is around saying, look, our tax levy in a non-override year is typically 4% and change, right? I think the average is 4.2, if I'm not mistaken. And the current rates of increase that we're seeing will put us outside of that aggregate number, and we need to take a look at which of these is actually moving, or how much of the staff is actually getting the step increases versus not. And I think we said approximately half do and approximately half are actually capped right now at the step 15. But I wonder if one way to frame this could be, look, for within the context of what we're allowed to, or what's been historically our increase in tax levy or roughly 4%. The current steps and lanes structure or current compensation structure over time becomes unsustainable without ongoing overrides, which we know that there is concern about continuing within the voter base in town. And taking a look at that in the context of what we typically expect as an increased tax levy year over year without an override might inform this differently, or might result in a different structure from a steps and lanes perspective. Perhaps anchoring it to what is sustainable in the context of a non-override incremental tax levy, I think could be a point worth making and demonstrating that sustained increases like this are unsustainable from a financial perspective over time. Or, a continued push to increase them would be. And to some extent, what we see right now, given the percentage, again, I think we have to take a look at the overall percentage of teachers who are capped versus not. So who's getting just the COLA increase versus who's getting increased steps, and work through what we think is sustainable versus not. It might be one way to approach it, or make a statement that is, without doing that analysis, could be more broad. Cliff?
Yep. We
Just so that
sorry.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Just for clarification, it's not the tax levy. The tax levy does not go up by 4+% a year. Total revenue might,
Yes.
but there are components, and that gets into other things to try to do to increase those components. But just from a language perspective, I did have a question about the capping after year 15, because I've noticed on this document that there's something called the longevity increase that I've noticed with some of these other towns, and I'm wondering if there's anything in our contract like that for people who've reached level 15 or after that point, and how does that work? Is it in addition to the CPI increase? And if so, is it a one-time thing like a gold watch, or is it something that gets added every year? I'm just kind of curious.
There is a longevity, and it's tiered by how many years you've been with the district, and it's only available, as you say, once you've hit the top step.
So let's say I'm at the top step. I get the longevity bonus. Okay, let's say it's $1. The next year, do I get another $1?
You get, let's say that it's like, I think it starts at 12 years. I could be misremembering, but like for years 12 through 15, if it's $1, you get $1 every year. And then for years 16 through 19, it's $2 and you get $2 every year.
It's what I believe, Cliff, what happens is you get the top step, which is increasing with COLA every year. And I think if you have 10 to 14 years, you add 1% to that. 15 to 19, you add 2%, then you add 3% and 4%. As you hear in the next 5-year blocks. So
plus the CPI.
Plus the CPI, because your top step is going up by the negotiated cost of living increase. Correct.
So so it's not, so people may be quote unquote capped, but they're not capped.
Right.
They are
They-
getting the COLA, but they're not getting an additional step once they hit 15.
They're not getting an additional step, but they're getting this additional longevity bonus.
They're
Only
getting
if you've been in, I mean, this is a longevity, this is like your tenure in town, right? So you
Yeah.
could come in at step 12, but it's your first year in Brookline, and so then you don't get that longevity bonus until you hit whatever 12 years is.
10 years, I think. Yeah.
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 I get it. I get it.
Okay, so it's a little,
So let me, Sadaf, go to
Yeah.
your question. We did ask for the assumptions that underlay the that underlay the calculation or the forecast of wages, and we don't have that.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how one would do what you're suggesting be done at this point.
so I think that, I think that's a fair point. And I wonder if then the reframing is more around keeping this in line with the increase in revenue, the average increase in revenue that we have as a town, given
Okay.
whatever that mix is. Because otherwise, I think if we say here, which is what's implied, although it's not explicitly stated, right, that if you were to keep the increases at 3%, right, so essentially a cost of living adjustment, I'm not sure. I think that we would not necessarily be competitive with other districts as a result of that type of capping. That's just giving you COLA increases, and I think that would be not good for our schools and in terms of being able to hire and retain strong talent. But I think it is more reasonable to say, look, as sort of a line item within our budget, we do need to make sure that we are keeping pace with or sort of aligned with the growth of our average revenue growth. Otherwise, this becomes very quickly, as 86% of the budget, an unsustainable level of growth that puts us in a situation where we're constantly doing these overrides. So some framing around the sustainability idea, I think would be beneficial in this context. And I'm interested in hearing, what other people think about that as well. Jeff or Cliff or Mariah.
Yeah, I started going down a path last week that I kind of get stuck on perseverate on things sometimes. It's really hard to look at these charts and to come up with the comparison that I think is really strongest or most important. And that is, what is our total compensation package versus, I don't care, it could be everyone or it could be a select number randomly chosen here of the comps, and quantify that in a way that, these percentages mean nothing to anybody. And the chart of 25, 26 by itself means nothing unless you're looking at what someone coming into Brookline and staying for 10, 12 years, whatever it is, maybe we look at the average tenure that we have. What is the rate of growth that they essentially are getting guaranteed without any additional negotiations in between? If they just stayed and things just, whatever the charts are, they just continue down that path. What is the compounded rate of growth in their compensation, and how does that compare to the communities that we're comparing ourselves to? Because to me, that's what really gives people who are who we've elected to understand and negotiate on our behalf, the context that I just don't think they have right now. Now, maybe that all those calculations are done and we just never see them, but in the absence of that, I think it's sort of like just throwing stuff against the wall without having any real context, and I'm having trouble with that. I don't know how we can do it. I think we can do it by making certain assumptions. I think looking at that growth is a pretty simple thing to do with one hypothetical. I think coming up with rates for different health plans is obviously more challenging, but you can pick a health plan and then just apply percentages and look at what the total value of that is. Anyway, I think that's important information, data to have if we're going to be talking about, increases, because it just puts things in perspective, and that we don't have the perspective of, okay, let's just pick, go by how much the revenue increases in town.
You do get, Cliff, you do get a snapshot of that with the table on page 2. If you look at, for example, the masters, which takes you from step 1 through step 15, it shows what the increases were at each level, essentially, of seniority from 25 to 26. So you get a snapshot of the progression there.
I understand
now,
that.
Now you could take a hypothetical person, I guess, starting in 2020 or 2015 or 2025 and make certain assumptions and go from there. And then I don't know, pick 11 other communities. That's where it gets complicated.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you could look historically, if all this information was public, and you could then craft that analysis, or you can take the 25, 26 table and just increase those factors by the inflation rate, okay, and nothing else, and just lay them out for the next 10 years and assume people go down the ladder, right? Which will change the numbers that are in this table. What you're suggesting is what I was talking about last week, and when I was talking about it last week, you said, no, that's not the right way to do it. So, I mean, I think something can be done. Maybe there's not enough time to do it, but I think unless people have that sort of information at their fingertips, they don't really know what they're talking about.
Can I make one little comment about this?
Sure.
Part of this, I think, requires communities to get together and actually do some sort of data sharing agreement, because otherwise the type of data you're discussing is relevant, but it's provided in a vacuum. So you're talking about total compensation packages, but we don't have the comparable data set to understand how it relates to other communities. And most of that data is not easily available. So, one recommendation from this committee could be to spearhead some sort of data sharing consortium.
So this isn't done as part of the contract negotiations, like a deeper benchmarking with comparable communities?
There is benchmarking done, but I'm not on negotiations right now, so I can't say exactly what they're being provided.
Fair.
But if you wanted to be able to, in the absence of knowing exactly what they're getting from negotiations, and knowing that there are private companies that will do, or I'll say private service providers that will do some of this work, I don't know that you necessarily want to use private service providers. It might be something that you could again save money if there was some sort of data sharing consortium, which is done in higher ed for salary benchmarking.
Interesting.
How much would it cost? to have a third party do it. Probably a fair amount.
That's why I'm saying, even if they're getting the data by having a contractor provide it, it could actually be more cost efficient to
Yeah,
suggest this consortium.
it's a good idea. Is it legal to do it?
I don't know why it wouldn't be. This is all public data.
Fair. Okay. Just asking.
Yeah.
Are the,
And I would presume that the contractor is getting this through public records requests of some sort. So it's just who does it and whether it's voluntarily shared or not.
Jeff,
are all the steps standardized? Like step 1, 2 bachelors and all that, or they're different across everybody? So you'd have to normalize it in some way to be able to compare it.
Yeah,
There's
different,
different numbers of steps in different places.
Yeah.
And the jump from step to step varies even by contract within one district, let alone,
Right, right.
but is the framework standard that you would have a bachelor's lane and a master's lane and a PhD lane, presumably?
well, not necessarily, because some have masters 15, some have masters 30, some have masters 45, some have masters 60. They don't all have like standardized masters
Mm.
lanes. So you might have one that has masters 15 and 30 but doesn't have 45, or one that has 30 and 60, etc.
So, okay, so obviously there'd be things you'd have to either, footnote or massage. But I guess so
This is for HR professionals with their
Right.
best practices to
yeah.
figure out.
I mean, have you guys asked for this before? Do you know?
Asked for from other communities.
Just asked to have this analysis done for your own benefit, when you're looking at negotiations. I mean,
The last time I was on negotiations, we did not have a deputy for admin and finance.
so what did you do as to comparable communities, if at all?
There was data collected, but I wouldn't say it was total compensation because I don't think there's any way to easily collect this. Like, I'm not sure even the town has that kind of data comparing against other town. Like fire, I don't think we have total cost of compensation on fire or police. I could be wrong, but I guess my point is this is pretty challenging data to collect in a meaningful fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly, as the tables at the end show, you certainly can take a snapshot of
Mhm.
where towns are
Yes.
at different levels. That you can do.
But to
And
your point, like, for example, if PSB is offering a lower salary, but a higher share of insurance, or another district is offering a higher salary, but lower share of insurance, there's things that need to be accounted for that aren't necessarily visible as you think about salary. Or a community offers a higher salary, but they're not on public transportation, or, like there's a lot to think about in all of this. So I think it's easy to I think it's valuable to get true HR professional input on this to do it right.
yeah, on the other hand, I think we can do what we can do realistically. And that's pretty much at where we are at this point.
But what
So,
I'm saying you can
some
do
tweaks,
is
but-
not just the analysis, but ensure that you're recommending stronger analyses going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually
That-
like the
that makes
idea
sense.
of, yeah,
Mm.
I like the idea of the recommendation of doing better total comp benchmarking and getting a better handle on it. And I think the context also that we do offer more currently for healthcare, for example, in addition to our strong salaries is just a helpful data point.
And the other thing to keep in mind is it's not just about salaries and health insurance, it's number of personal days, it's number of sick
Totally.
days, right?
Yeah.
There's like
Which is
exactly all
smart
of
to
the,
glean, like all of
Yep,
the
yep.
total compensation.
and it's never been totally clear to me, like, and again, this is something that HR professionals have agreed to a best practice, like what is the value of a personal day, right? Like, is it, is it just a straight, one day? I have no idea how they, in their professional determination, evaluate those, but it's important to understand total package. So,
Yeah. Realistically, it may depend, not may, and I'm sure does depend on the individual.
Right.
And there are some individuals who might value a larger number of personal days more than others would. If
That's right. Given their situation, circumstances.
yeah,
So,
exactly,
and it's
exactly. And
interesting
I
'cause-
don't.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
you could, I think, drive yourself crazy trying to get into, for our purposes, get into that level.
I agree, but then the table runs the risk of, again, just oversimplifying it as like the summary statement says we're paying more by thousands of dollars. And I fundamentally don't know that I could agree with that statement because I don't know that it actually represents the true state of, and in fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't represent the true state of PSB salaries in relation to our true hiring comparator districts.
Because we don't have a view into benefits and total comp.
Well, and because it doesn't represent our geographic peers, right? Like this is the question of the override. Salaries drive the budget. Like, right, the unsustainable rise in salaries is what puts us in this situation. So to make a oversimplified and possibly factually inaccurate statement really risks overall credibility and understanding. I mean, this document is supposed to guide the community and guide the select board, and if it makes an incorrect glib statement, it's really problematic.
So I think we discussed already, and I think, Dick, you were going to add the other geographic peers, which I think is important as a benchmark and a comparison. So
Okay.
I think that's helpful, and I think that's important. But I think there is also a limit to what we have access to as well. I think taking a look at this in the context of total compensation is important. I don't know how people value personal days. I can tell you how, people value these things in my sort of private enterprise professional career, which is that people tend to look at their base and bonus salary and less at bonus because sometimes that's inconsistent and their base is sort of the people primarily index on. But this is a different beast, so I don't know how that applies, and that's anecdotal. As far as the but I do think the total compensation, especially given the cost of healthcare, is an important component, and I think we don't have the data to be able to look at that full package. So I think what we can include is only what we can include, right, Dick? Which is I think.
Yeah, and I think, Sadaf, we can follow up on your concept of keeping it aligned somehow with average revenue growth.
And right, and to highlight that, like, the reality is that like it becomes unsustainable, right? Otherwise you're dependent on overrides to pay people's salaries, and that's tough because the reality is that an override is not guaranteed to be approved, and it risks people's jobs fundamentally. That's the other side of it. That given the size of wages within the context of the budget, if you can't get that override approved, then it comes out of people's jobs are at risk. And I think that's an important message.
Okay.
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 Can I
All
just
right.
make one little comment? I mean, part of this is you can just say, you could acknowledge also that this analysis is incomplete. Like I won't say it's incomplete, but it just doesn't represent the complexity of the entirety of the complexity of the issue. Put a caveat on and make sure it's
fair to
obvious.
say that, this is the data that we had access to, and there are other things that people might consider, but
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. And I really like the idea of the consortium are making a recommendation that the schools get a handle on, get higher fidelity data on what the comparables are with respect to the full compensation package. It's a great recommendation we can make.
Okay.
All right.
See you next week.
Wait, are we done?
No.
Not even
we're just getting
close.
I
started.
was like, I thought Dick had 2 more documents to go through.
Dick has
That was something of a rueful comment there.
Yeah.
So
I
the
mean, look, I think we can talk through if Dick, if you want to sort of talk through what those bullets would look like, and we
And
could
I've
potentially,
taken notes. I'll take a shot at it.
yeah, and then we can vote on those or vote on the document with those updates. I think we can.
With with the committee's permission, I'll fly it past UCDA.
Yes, I mean, I'm okay with that. But
so this, just not to throw out some craziness, but does this include paras or not include paras?
Those would include paras, steps and lanes.
Yeah.
They have their own steps chart.
Okay.
I have not gotten into that.
That's
You
what I
wanna do-
thought.
You want to do that, Jeff?
No, I do not. But I just wanted to make sure I understood.
There are fewer paras,
There are, but it's
and their rate of increase has been much larger than teachers because of the salary disparity that has
right.
been in place.
I remember that part. The reason I thought about it was because I think in my mind I had thought that paras were a much smaller percentage of total cost, and when I was looking at all the beep stuff, it was like, oh, that's a big number. It wasn't as big as the educators, the teachers, right? But it was more than I had thought in my mind, so it just made me think about it. So
What roughly what percentage of the wages do you know offhand are our administration? What percentage are paras? What percentage are the educators? Roughly.
it's a good
Percentage,
question.
you mean like total percentage of the wage pool?
Right.
I could ballpark it right now.
Yeah,
It should be in the budget book by staffing category.
yeah. I only had I was only looking at the beep,
Paraprofessionals are
so
13 million versus professional staff of 91.9 million. And there's other categories in there as well, but those would be
yeah,
the
so roughly
major categories that we're
94-ish.
referring to.
I mean, is it worth looking at paras at this point?
That's a good question.
I am not sure it is, given that the prior conversations we've had, and Mariah, you can keep me honest here again, but is that our paras, there has been conversation among the school committee around increasing the compensation for paras, because right now the compensation is relatively low.
Yeah, I would be inclined to leave it alone.
I would agree with that. I don't think it's the place where there's going to be any real feedback. In fact, there is, I think, a potential, or some real room to improve that compensation from what I've seen.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm comfortable with you running the revised bullets by me. Do we want to talk through the, just sort of recap, Dick, the updates that you're going to make so that this committee can vote on what will be summarized as the summary of the document and really essentially the recommendation, which is at the top of your document, and then we can at least vote on it among this committee. You and I can work on the wording, but we'll get it into the review for the 18th, so next week, without having to come back to this committee.
We will have a meeting Monday of next week, won't we?
Yes. And it is fine to share an updated
Is it
version
Monday or
again.
Tuesday? I thought Monday's the holiday.
Yes.
Yes, Monday is the holiday.
It did get
Okay.
moved to Tuesday.
It's
I
on
think.
Tuesday.
And
yeah.
the full committee is Wednesday.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be, I mean, yeah. Thank you for the reminder, since I won't
I'm
be.
sorry.
No, thank you for the reminder that it's Tuesday, actually, Mariah, because it's not on my calendar because I'm not going to be able to.
So I'm gonna add Cambridge and Boston. We're going to add at the end a recommendation that the schools get a handle on benchmarking total compensation against comparable communities. We are going to, and noting that this is not a view of total compensation and benefits. And we're going to have a comment or statement that it's important to face the reality of keeping along with average revenue that's expected in order to retain a sustainable salary structure. I think those were the three main points.
Yeah, I think those were the points. Is there anything else
Yeah.
from the group? Cliff, Jeff, Mariah? Hey, Mariah, we're able to hear a lot of background noise from your side. Can I mute you or can you mute?
Sorry. Yeah, I'll mute myself.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So I'm actually comfortable voting on this document with those updates. And then it'll
Okay.
obviously come back to the full committee on the 18th, so people will get to take another look at it.
So moved.
All right, at second.
Second.
All right, 2 seconds. All right, Dick,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mariah,
Abstain.
and I vote yes. All right. Thank you, Dick.
Special education costs for non-resident students is another document that was circulated. If you have had a chance to read it, it uses the DESE data from school year 23 to 24 for in-district special education costs. The data then was about $30,000 per special education in-district student average, approximately $28,000 per in-district special education student if in-district special education transportation costs are not included. Using those figures, the in-district special education costs for non-resident students would amount to about $4 million for the 144 non-resident students who receive special education services. We don't have any other calculations from the schools enabling us to look at the special education costs for non-resident students, and that raises a number of possible questions. One thing, for example, we know is that the PSB, we were told, sought additional compensation from the state or reimbursement from the state for special education for METCO students, and was denied that.
We applied for a grant and we didn't receive the funds. I wouldn't describe it as the state refusing to provide reimbursement. It's very different. That's a different tenor than applying for the grant and not receiving a grant.
Okay. Okay, let me make that note. It would be interesting to see and useful to see the justification and the calculations and the computations that PSB used in applying for that grant in terms of how it assigned costs to METCO special education.
There was only 300 and something thousand dollars from the state for the entire, all of the METCO districts combined. And PSB applied for just about a third of it, which was the cost of 3 paraprofessionals. And it was literally, this is the cost of 3 paraprofessionals we are applying for.
Do you know how they arrived at 3 paraprofessionals?
I presume there are 3 METCO students who need paraprofessionals, one-to-one paraprofessionals. I don't know if that's all of them or what, but again, that was the calculation that was provided and PSP got none.
How long ago was that?
Now you got me. Maybe August, September was the application. And we were denied, I think, a couple months later. Those are very rough estimates of time, but that is my vague recollection.
So,
So
go ahead.
the,
All of my questions.
you know, I acknowledge in this that the numbers are average costs, but we don't have any other basis for assigning costs to non-resident special education students. We know the number that are in, at least in the information that was provided to us, the number that are in substantially separate classrooms. We know the total numbers. We know that they are about 1/8 of the special education students in the Brookline system in district. So it's not likely that you have 1 or 2 that you are fitting in. But the discussion of this raises the issues that are set out and raises the question of where we go from here. With the bottom line that we're essentially subsidizing the sending districts who are avoiding those costs. Those districts aren't compensating Brookline. The state isn't compensating Brookline. And can we provide a thoughtful analysis of the cost and a plan for recovering them, short of reducing the number of non-resident students in the future? And can the existing practices realistically be maintained in view of the deficits that we're facing? It asks those questions at the end as somewhat rhetorical questions.
So one of the things we had talked about when we discussed this topic earlier in this process was making an explicit recommendation around lobbying at the state level, around increasing funding for this particular, for special education, and specifically for the METCO program. I think that would be helpful to be explicit about in this document as one path, and probably the primary path that would be relevant for the town to pursue. I would assume that would require us to collaborate with other towns as well. But you know, that's an assumption. I think there's a discussion, Mariah, you said that's the meeting that's happening today, as we speak, with state legislators. I assume there will be other opportunities to have those conversations as well. But I think it's important to surface that as one of the primary mechanisms through which we can look for dollars to offset these costs that are incurred by the town. It's part of how the state funds the overall program. Mariah, go ahead.
I mean, I think that it's important for this committee to be clear about what your point is. Are you advocating for Brookline to discontinue materials fee or discontinue METCO? And if not, are you advocating for what Sadaf is saying? Just as it is, it's an analysis, but without a point. So I think making the point is actually useful. And if it is what Sadaf is saying, I agree. And so I think it's worth saying that as opposed to just the financial analysis.
So I am not advocating that we stop the materials fee program or the METCO program. Just to be clear, that is not something that I am advocating for or that I would support as a recommendation. I think that what we want to do is recommend that the town and the schools specifically is schools are more aggressive about finding ways to secure additional funding. And I think the state level lobbying is probably the right path, given how the METCO program is funded at the state level. That feels like the right place to go.
This is
So-
just for special ed though, right? This isn't for all of METCO or all of,
That's right. It's
yeah, okay. Just clarifying.
So that's my perspective, and you know, interested in other people sharing their perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I think a lot of these, it's been hard, right? Coming up with we have analysis, and then is our recommendation going to be something along the lines of, please review our analysis and see if it makes sense, or is it going to be something more specific? I do think that this one it would be good to have something, even if it is go to the state level and see if we can have something changed. Now that obviously is going to take a long time, if anything, to make happen, but I don't really know what else we would be able to do here. Certainly would be interesting if we had other options, but I'm not sure there are any. But I do think that this one does definitely, in my mind, lean that direction, because otherwise I think it's just going to be tough to do anything else with it if it's just the costs are high and we're not being subsidized, which is true. But I think the recommendation would be meatier if we had something along those lines.
So my understanding of some of the prior conversations we have and around other options for funding was that there had been some prior cases and some legal ruling about the city of Boston actually paying for some of the special education, right? So Mariah, I think you had raised this in a prior meeting. You can probably summarize this more accurately than I can, but that wasn't an avenue. I think there's a question, and then in the context of material fee students, we are the home district now for those students. So I don't know that going back to, we're not.
We are not, like, for purposes of special education, we are not the home district.
For a materials fee student?
No, I don't believe we are still
Okay.
considered, like, their home district is responsible for providing FAPE. They are being educated in Brookline, but we are not their legal home district, if that
Got
makes sense.
it. Okay.
Yes.
That's helpful. And so is there something, I don't know who that was. Is there something there for us to talk about? Is there something there to pursue further, specifically for materials fee students and funding?
And in terms of charging the home district?
Yes.
I think that, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I would imagine that the challenge is that the district never made an agreement with PSB. PSB has an agreement with the resident of their district, who is our educator or our employee, whether on the town or school side. But there is no agreement between PSB and their home district that would be any sort of mechanism to then charge back against.
Got it. But it is probably worth exploring. I mean, because what you stated, I think logically makes sense, Mariah, but I think we would need to look at whether there's a way.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I would say that I believe it has been explored.
Okay.
But I don't want to be the authoritative person. on
Yeah.
that. Yes, but yes.
So I think that's worth clarifying or including in here to the extent that this hasn't been explored. Is that an option?
PSB
And that
did,
covers both of the buckets of non-resident students that were raised. Go ahead, Dick.
and
You're saying something.
I'm sorry, and this would be exploring charging their home districts.
That's right.
Okay.
With METCO, just to be clear, with METCO, you cannot. This is legislative. Like PSB in that case does become the home district for METCO students, not for material fee students.
Right. And that's why the recommendation on that front is lobbying at the state level around how the METCO grant is funded and lobbying to cover more special education as part of that, to really, sort of fully fund the program or fund the program more fully, or students pay fully?
Both how much is provided and what the rules are around what can be allocated against the grant. Both of those things. Yes.
Why, what is the limitation right now around the grant? It's staffing, right?
You can provide staffing, but for example, PSB was charging classroom teachers to it, and my understanding is PSB has been told that I think as of this year that we can no longer charge classroom teachers against it. So, and it has to be all essentially wraparound support for METCO students, is my understanding. That's what the
This is-
direction has been from the state.
This is to the Metco grant. The
Correct.
general,
Correct. So for example, if the METCO grant could be both increased and made more flexible, less restricted in what could be charged against it, it might, either one of those things or both of those things could be beneficial to balancing the costs that you have pointed out, Dick.
and how do we calculate what you described as wraparound services? How do we calculate the value of those or the cost of those?
It's not all wraparound services. It's the METCO, what's called the METCO advisors, who are paraprofessionals, and yeah, the transportation. And I think the Star Academy program is funded. I'm just doing the METCO grant off the top of my head, but it's discrete items that are provided.
I mean, I know that Metco has the administrator, the secretary, the liaison, at the various.
Yep, and then
schools.
there's right, there's a para at each school, and
Right.
and a program director at the high school, etc.
Okay, but we are not allowed at this point to charge. You said classroom teachers, we're not allowed to charge special education teachers either. Is that?
Educators, yes, like the educators, any of them is, I don't know if we're still in a transition year and we've been told that's coming or where it's at, but the direction was clear to us a year or so ago that this would not be allowed anymore. It had been a historical practice.
Well, that makes things worse.
It does. That's why I think that it would be better to have, again, not only the budget increased, but but more flexibility allowed in the cost allocation. That
So
could be
I
a
do-
point of advocacy.
One question I do raise, in their responses to our questions, PSB stated that prior to accepting a METCO student, it determines whether PSB, quote, has adequate in-district supports and space available. And says that materials fee is done on a space available basis, and the parent is asked for a copy of the student's IEP. And the question is, do we, other than out-of-district students, have we rejected or denied application to non-resident students because of the cost or the requirements for in-district special education? Because that may be one way to approach this.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I would keep in mind, Dick, that a lot of these kids are coming in kindergarten when they don't necessarily have IEPs. Like this is their first sort of interaction with formal education. And so it would be something that an IEP could be developed after they join PSB. But I don't have the answer to your question of to what level this documentation is being scrutinized and rejected up front.
Okay, so that is a question that is raised, and maybe that's a recommendation that we include that.
A couple of weeks ago, as part of the meeting materials, PSB staff provided Bella and Karen provided the agreement that staff sign every year. And so you can see what that document entails to maintain participation for their student and materials fee.
Yeah, this is the type of effort that, like the salary one, I think we'd only get traction here if we can sort of get several other, preferably larger communities that are involved with Metco. Material C is different because it's not directed at one particular program, to lobby. I think there's just be potentially strength in numbers. I'm not too sanguine about us as a standalone making much headway.
My assumption is that the committee would not say, look, unless we get more money from the state, we're going to stop accepting additional Metco students or materials fee students. Let's take Metco.
I mean, you could raise the issue of whether or not you wanted to use screening as a way to adjust the population that you take in. I don't know how that would fly. I do think, to the extent that you're going to lobby the state, which I think is an appropriate thing to do, if we got Newton and Lexington to join, between the three of us, we have over a third of Metco students in Eastern Massachusetts. Springfield is sort of completely different.
I think this idea of screening students before they come in becomes really problematic given the data that was shared in the fall about how there's this disproportionate assigning of special ed services to certain populations and to Black students in our district specifically. So which is there's something to be better understood there as to why that ends up happening. And I think that adding that as a screening criteria, I think, becomes problematic and a slippery slope, in my opinion, that I wouldn't feel comfortable.
I'm not advocating for it. I'm just
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the committee is gonna support withdrawing from the program or sort of limiting our participation in the program. I mean, I wouldn't support it. I can't speak for everybody, certainly, but and so I think that the biggest opportunity for us is, are there additional ways for us to secure funding? What are those ways? Where do we think the highest value might be, or the highest likelihood, and how might that be accomplished? And Cliff, I think that your comment around, I think you said Newton and Lexington is interesting. It might be worth including, but that feels like the type of advocacy that we haven't really pursued, and that this committee can recommend. That feels like a reasonable and rational path to address the issue from my point of view.
Okay.
All right, other comments on this? Okay. So Dick, I think if you want to vote on this today, we could just sort of summarize the updates you're making, and then I think we could vote.
Well,
About that.
it sounds to me that the bottom line recommendation on this is that we are on Metco lobbying at the state level with working with the other communities, particularly Lexington and Newton, that are responsible for the majority of, or a large portion of the Metco students in this part of the state. And we're making some comment, and it would be actually useful, Mariah, to get the changes that are made, making some comment about the way that the Metco agreement has changed to limit what we can include in the Metco grant, and the negative impact of that. So I think those would be the two, in reverse order, those would be the two major issues that I'm hearing here.
Yes.
I will request from Betsy if she can find anything we have in writing. I know it's been talked about. I know it's on a recording at a public meeting, but I don't I don't know what we've got beyond that, but I'll see what Betsy can pull up.
Yeah, or just a quick statement of what we now cannot charge for that we were able to charge for before. So, okay,
That sounds good to me. So based on those updates, are we comfortable voting on this document? I lost everybody. It's all
I'm
it's 30s.
good.
Sure.
All right. All right, so I move to take a vote on the document. We have a second.
Second.
All right. Dick,
Aye.
Cliff,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mariah,
Abstain.
and I also vote yes. All right, thank you, Dick. And
Okay.
the last thing I wanted to surface in this meeting is related to a conversation, a number of conversations.
Wait, doesn't Dick have one other document about the healthcare? So weren't there 3?
We've done that.
Did we? And I missed it? How is that possible?
We
Okay.
did it a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, the one you sent tonight was just as an FYI. Okay, very good.
With the updates we had discussed.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to stay longer, Mariah? We can happy to continue.
Well, I want to say my new business when it's time for new business.
It is
So-
time for new business. So I
Okay.
was going to surface a topic related to new business. I don't know if it's related. Let me tee this up. We can have a conversation about it. So the new business that I wanted to surface is we had a discussion at the full committee meeting about the financial model or the recommendations related to the work that the financial model subcommittee, which was assembled briefly in the summer, was supposed to undertake. And that conversation was never completed. The committee kind of dissolved, and there were questions that were asked when we reviewed the outline a week or 2 ago around where did this conversation land? Because the work hadn't been completed, Cliff pointed out fairly that it's not reasonable to put a conclusion in our report because we didn't finish the work, which I think is fair. There have been some other conversations that have surfaced related to buildings and building maintenance. This was one of the topics that was intended to be addressed as part of the overall discussion on responsibilities across town and school, and how this might be managed from a financial model standpoint. So what I wanted to surface for this group is, and there were 2 documents that were posted, and they were posted late in the day, so apologies. But under new business, the first one is a document from Carol Levin related to the management of school buildings. The second one is a memo that Chaz had published in July of last year. And this was a high-level proposal for how we might revise the financial model. It has some ideas in here. Again, these were suggestions. I'm sharing this because it was something that had been shared with the subcommittee. It was never accepted, but it was something that had been surfaced. So the question for this group is, given where we are, given the timeline, do we think it's worth resurfacing some of these components and trying to make some sort of recommendation related to at least pieces of this? And if so, what would that scope be? I think this would be the logical subcommittee for that conversation to happen within. And I know that time is tight, so there's only so much we can do, but I think there might be some value in highlighting at least components of this over the next few weeks. This is something that I can help drive to the extent that we want to work on it. And so this is really, for discussion from this group, within this group, rather. What do people think?
I guess the first question is, has everyone or anyone had a chance to review the material
Yeah.
for them to be able to
This is a
weigh
fair
in?
and legitimate question. And I believe
I
Carol
didn't-
is on the call in case we wanted to talk about her memo. She is Brookline Zoom guest number 2.
Ah, okay.
Um,
Oh.
Was wondering.
I know incognito with the with that name, but
I just
I
changed it. I don't know why it was left as Brookline Zoom guest 2 the whole time.
well
Because I
well,
couldn't
did-
change it.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Ah,
s- so anyway, so let's ask the question if this is something that we
Wait,
want
what's the question?
components
Hold
of.
on. Sorry, what's the question? The
So
change in the financial model or specifically what Carol is proposing?
so what Carol is proposing is the issue of the ownership around the building maintenance was a subset of what is actually addressed and was supposed to be addressed as part of the financial model subcommittee work. Mariah, this predates your tenure on the committee, right? This was something that I believe Sarah and Jesse, or Jesse was a part, I don't remember who was representing schools. But this was over the summer. This is before you shifted into your role in the fall. So I understand this might be completely new to you. It is mentioned in the memo as there is a mention in the memo around shifting where the dollars live for building maintenance, and then establishing a memorandum of understanding so that there's a an established methodology through which the buildings are maintained, and how the collaboration happens. I don't think it is viable to spend time writing a bunch of MOUs, right? Or sort of, for schools in town to do MOUs at all within this timeline. But given that this question was raised related to building maintenance, the question for this group is, given this original scope of this financial model subcommittee, are there components of this that we want to resurface and work on as a subcommittee, to determine whether, to try and distill into a recommendation for the purposes of the report that this committee will create? And if so, what would that scope be? Because we can't boil the ocean and time is very limited. So that is the question. Is this something we want to pick up all of components of, given the timeline? Mariah, you have your hand raised.
Thanks. So I read Carol's memo and I'm not sure I would go with I skimmed it just now because I hadn't seen it earlier. And I'm not sure I would go with option A or option B. And in general, Carol, I think that it again sets things up as not a collaborative relationship. But I guess, and I don't think there's a need for that kind of writing, but I do think that there could be a possibility where building maintenance in general goes above the line. And I think that that achieves what Carol's talking about. I don't want to speak for Carol's, but I think that that would allow building allocation, building maintenance, which is really important, to be taken out of both the town and the school's budget. This memo focuses a lot on the school's side of maintenance, and I understand why, because the schools are the vast majority of the physical plant square footage. But the fact is that the town has also underfunded its repair and maintenance budget as well and needed to play catch up year after year. So I think that if the committee believes that we should, if the committee believes this, and I do tend to agree with this, although I'm not sure I probably would abstain again on this. I think that there's a value to moving buildings above the line and allowing that repair and maintenance budget to float the way it needs to, and be dealt with separately and outside of, and not in direct competition with departmental and school budgets.
Yeah. So I think that, so thank you. That's helpful. I didn't intend for us to debate Carol's document specifically, although, like I said, Carol's here to answer questions about it if people have questions. I think that the point that you made that I think is really important, Mariah, is that the schools, I think, are put in a difficult position where the primary purpose of the schools is to deliver services and education to the students, and then you have to
The
make
town
difficult
is too,
decisions.
right? I mean, like if you're.
I mean, that's true, but
it's
what
true
I'm
on
saying is
both
that
sides.
in the budget discussions, for example, last spring, it's a difficult conversation to have. It is a difficult choice to have to make around maintenance versus retaining programs, and continuing to staff those programs. And so I
On the
think that
town side, I believe that Charlie made a request larger than what he's getting. and he's not, and the town is not being pilloried for it. The schools are being pilloried for it. I'm putting that aside, but I'll just say to you, it's not just a schools issue. Everyone suffers when building maintenance is pitted against operating budgets. That's all.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair too. My point specifically is that there might be a better structure, and I don't think that we have to debate exactly what it would look like, but I think the question is, does this subcommittee want to undertake this question, right? And the question is potentially broader, which is, the broader question that was raised as part of the financial model subcommittee, which was the above the line, below the line question. And this was one of the items in that memo that was teed up by or the effort more broadly that was teed up by Chaz and Bernard when this committee was assembled. Cliff?
Yeah, thanks. So to bluntly answer your question, yeah, I think we should try to do something with this. I also don't understand why this would be something that only this group would be looking at. I think you could tell the folks on the town side, you need to look at this too. And Mariah, you actually raised a question or raised a point that I've been wondering about, which is, how has the town group been, dealing with Charlie's request? And how is that kind of like filtering in? Because I thought that was a pretty well-written memo that he put together. And I agree with you. The town should be pushed on why they're not supporting his request. So I think it's a really good point. But yeah, I think we and others should definitely be looking at this.
I think the reason that I was asking if this committee would look at it, that's not to say we wouldn't involve other people in that conversation. I mean, ultimately, any recommendation would go to the broader committee, but somebody needs to drive it. And what I'm proposing is that this subcommittee pick it up and try to move it forward, since that financial model subcommittee, which Cliff, I know you were on as well, doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, here's the thing. When that happens, it takes discretion away from both sides, right? If one were to move the building costs above the line and either create a better, a more accurate, bigger than 2.5%, which is what their increase, the default building department raise is now. Or make more subtle analyses every year as to what's supposed to happen with the building increase. It would take that discretion away from PSB and the departments as to making that decision. And to me, the question is just, does the town overall financially benefit from that? And I think that's the trade-off, right? Like, what is better for the town? If we're not playing shell games with building maintenance.
I don't have the ability to raise my hand, but could I just give some clarification as to what the intent has been of this proposal?
Sure.
So hi, this is Carol talking. I can't turn my video on. Oh, I guess maybe I can turn my video on. Hi. So this is something that I've been talking about to various people for the last year and a half. And when you're talking about any sort of physical asset, but I'm most familiar with real estate, and you have these agreements covering their use, the goal is to make sure control and financial liability are properly aligned, meaning that the person or the party that makes a decision about how you use an asset and is going to incur the expenses are the same party. And we go into great detail in real estate agreements to make sure that parties, those decisions and the assignment of risk and control are aligned. So this proposal is not just about the PSB, it's about all town departments. And from a cost accounting standpoint, making sure that all departments have a full allocation of what their costs are. Excuse me. So their occupancy costs are, so they aren't making decisions to use space and not being able to support it. But it's not directed at the PSB, and this predates the PSB, though this year's PSB issue though the memo talks about it, because I was responding to some requests from some people. But this is a model across town, all town departments, and it's going to be a policy that's missing now, talking about what each party's rights are to the space and what the obligations are to the other parties to provide services, which is not clear anywhere right now, and why it's so hard to track what the expenses are. So anyways, hope that helps.
Can I add a little bit to that? I think that independent of what the financial model is, that the understanding, the responsibilities can be treated separately, just no matter where this lands. Better articulation through MOUs would be really valuable, even if the financial model isn't one of the options that have been discussed tonight.
Yep. Okay.
And there's an MOU from like 1994 between PSB and the town about which is when the building department was transferred from the school's building maintenance to the town. And it clearly could use a refresh 32 years later.
Right. It feels like it's time. All right, Jeff, Dick, what do you guys think about taking this on and the role of this committee?
I'll go real quick just because I had to switch back to mobile, and then I can jump in the car and all that. But I think we should take this on. I'm not sure. My only worry is the time. I know we're so busy, and I have lost track of where the other subcommittees are as far as load and what they're up to. It does seem to be very important and something that I think we should take on. I just am worried if we take it on as school subcommittee that we just won't have enough time to give it the proper due. Plus, again, the same point Cliff made, it crosses everything anyway, right? So
Yeah.
It's almost like we go back to the main committee, but I know we're not sort of working side things like this through there. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I've got a solution to that, actually.
Yes.
I think that we should just make Carol an ex officio member. And then
there you go.
she can run point on it.
Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah, nice. Voluntold.
Carol didn't know that's what she was walking into tonight. Dick? Do you have a
Yeah,
perspective?
my sense is that if we don't do it, it's not going to get done by anybody in this process. That puts it on our plate, I think.
Yeah, so that's sort of where I was coming from. I mean, certainly we would get input from other people, but that is also my perspective, and that's why I thought it would be appropriate to bring it to this group. So I did reach out to Melissa around getting the financial analysis that had been started related to this topic, and the specific thing that I had requested was to take a look at if we were to shift the dollars that are above the line and below the line, really shift this financial model, what would this have looked like in the past 3 years, so we can get our head around both the optics and then think about what that would mean. They haven't had the capacity to finish that. And Melissa did say that she was willing to chat about it after they published the budget book on the 13th. And so I think we can connect and maybe resurface it at the meeting this week. Actually, but that's the 11th. So by the end of the week, anyways, we'll have a better perspective on whether they have time to devote to it. But what I would propose is that if we pick this up and then consider if we need additional help from the town subcommittee, and think about how to manage the scope of this so that it fits within the timeline that we have. I think that Chaz's memo is a solid starting point that needs to be debated. So that could be one way of streamlining the process, and then sort of pushing on answering the questions that are posed in that memo and making some revisions to that to try to come up with a model that we could then propose. So it might be one approach that we could take. I want to make sure that we discuss and debate what was proposed there, and really think about whether that makes sense, as well as see the financial analysis. Mariah, go ahead.
When you're referring to Chaz's memo, was this something that happened over the summer too, before I joined?
No, it was, yeah, that actually was attached. It's one of the
For today.
documents.
Okay, so that I should just look at that one. Okay,
That's
thank
right.
you.
That's right. It was shared at the end of July and I added it to this meeting so that people would have it handy. But if you do
Perfect,
go
thank
to the July 28th, it's called like Expenditure ENRC Financial Model Subcommittee, I think is the name of the meeting. I can actually send the link around. There are some additional supporting documents that were included in that set of meeting materials that are probably worth taking a look at as well.
Thank you.
Just some
That's super helpful.
memos and other things that I think would bring everyone up to speed, because we only had 1 or 2 meetings of that subcommittee before it kind of faded.
I was curious, Mariah, about your comment about discretion.
Hmm.
What you were getting to there.
My point is that, well, I think if it's what the comment I think I'm making, that's, for example, both Charlie's budget for town maintenance, town building maintenance, and school building maintenance inflates at 2.5%. And then if it's but he often comes with a budget that is 4%, 5%, some amount higher. And so then school committee or whoever the decider is on the town side, I don't know, has to decide. They have to have the discretion whether or not to increase above and beyond the 2.5%, thus taking away from some other funding priority or not. And so but then that's the challenge. If we agree that buildings are going above the line and there's going to be some other decision, whether it's 4% or whether it's, again, this, new being that is going to decide how much the building maintenance should be increased, then that's the question is, it takes any discretion away from the town and PSB for the town to say, no, we're only going to fund you at 2.5% this year versus the 4% you asked for, or the same thing on the PSB side. But unfortunately for us, and I think for the town too, right, it puts you in the situation of, buildings are important and your other programs are important. And so if you're going to fund the building maintenance, then what else are you cutting? That's the point about discretion. Does that help clarify?
I guess, yeah. I know that one of the concerns has been that that it's sometimes too easy to say, look, we've got to deal with X issues that are the pressing issues right now, and to put off building maintenance because it doesn't have an immediate impact, and yet that causes greater costs down the road. And I don't know
And
how
in PSB, we've been working really hard against that. I mean, the repair and maintenance budget has increased way more than everything else. But part of the reason we were able to do that was by using ARPA funds that were plugged in the last override. So it's really important. And again, it just has to do with all these competing demands. And I think you're right, Dick. You don't want building maintenance to fall to the side. And so what's the right financial model to ensure that doesn't happen?
the term a number of years ago, and it's not a term that's been used recently, was the shabification of Brookline. I don't know if you remember that from, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. When
I don't think I can't speak for the town side. I don't necessarily know that I go on all of them. I don't think that our buildings are shabby now, but I think that it's important to maintain them and it just costs money. And I feel sad every time that I think about the 2008 override that only set the recurring building department increase at 2.5%, because we might be in a very different position now if it had been set a little bit higher. But unfortunately, that's now the default. And building costs, as we know, are increasing, like everything, but building department too is increasing by much more.
All right.
Can I bring up my new business?
Yes, but I just want to come to a conclusion on this. So I think Dick and I are in support of this committee taking it on. My assumption is that we would pull in other people as needed, and then ultimately would go to the full committee, obviously, for discussion and vote. But I'm willing to do work on this. I think we can streamline the effort a little bit by using what Chaz has as a starting point, and then updating it, evolving, and sort of making decisions based on the survey and the other work that was done over the summer with comparable.
and involving Carol.
Yes, We can absolutely involve Carol if Carol is willing to be involved. So I think that would be helpful. Cliff and Jeff, are you guys comfortable with that?
Yeah, I am.
Yep, that works.
Okay. All right, great. So I have a follow-up with Melissa at the end of this week. And then because I'm unavailable next week, maybe Jeff, you and I can connect and or Cliff and I will connect. I will connect with somebody, so we'll have an update at
Sure.
the meeting that everybody has without me on the 17th.
Sure.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Mariah, your new business.
Thanks. So after our capital meeting, Finance and Capital Subcommittee, School Committee meeting last week, the conversation around building temperatures came up. And it turns out that PSB and town buildings are both heated to 72 degrees. And I wonder if this committee and the ERSC as a whole wouldn't like to make a recommendation around maintaining building temperatures at lower levels, closer to what I believe most of us heat our homes at, and closer to lower but still comfortable temperatures.
What do you heat your home at?
Me?
Just
68. It was
kidding.
66 today.
Start the bidding.
Put on a sweater. Put on a sweater. That's the name of this. Put on a sweater recommendation is what this is called.
I'm seated in a room and I have the temperature at 66.
Exactly. Exactly. It's called Your Grandma Said Put on a Sweater.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think the question becomes understanding from someone who probably knows more than we do about the appropriate way or range that building temperatures are suggested to be set at. Because we had a new furnace put in, and the guys who put it in said, look, don't let this go below X, right? Because if you let it go too low and you want to bring it up, you're going to use more energy bringing it back up than you would if you maintained it at a particular level that was closer to where you ultimately want it to go. And so I think understanding that and making sure that we don't recommend, an overnight low that's too low is what I'm saying.
It's not even about overnight low. I mean, it's because there's a whole, there was subsequent conversations about this too, right?
Yeah.
About, Charlie said that historically there was at one point a policy to maintain buildings at 68, but the will to adhere to that has eroded. And I think that there is an opportunity to adhere to community values around sustainability, to raise awareness, and to also, if we were, Sergio actually followed up with a back of the envelope calculation, which to me, based on what he said and what I know of everything, it's about $500,000 a year in savings going from 72 to 68 in the buildings, which is, even if it's off by 50%, that's still $250,000. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Right. I mean, I would argue it might even be higher. I'm regularly in the school buildings where windows are cracked open in December. So there's that. So I'm okay taking it on. We'll need to write something up about it. Mariah, I assume that you're volunteering to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's some other conversations here, but I do think it would have, I think staff need to talk about this also. I think that Sergio pointed out, and it's a good idea to engage Alexandria Vecchio, who's the sustainability director for the town. Not just Charlie, although of course also Charlie, who has already been engaged in this conversation, but it also takes some senior administrator commitment and buy-in on both sides as well.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm happy to be engaged on this one as well.
Okay, great. Jeff, feedback from you and Dick?
Sounds great to me.
Dick,
Good.
you're adding this?
Okay.
Great. So Mariah, just let me know when you think that you'll have something for us to review so I can just add it to the agenda and plan for it.
I'll start CCing you on some emails. I've sort of been waiting in place for us to have this conversation and we'll go from there.
Okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everybody. Anything else to talk about? All right.
Nope.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.